name is Kevin Touch, and I will be your host for the next 20 or 30 minutes. What we try to do with this particular program is provide you information. Doesn't matter what it's necessarily about. It could be something happening in the community. It could be an issue that's being discussed. It could be folks who are seeking office, political office. Today, we are fortunate, privileged to have joining us Plymouth County District Attorney Tim Cruz is here in studio. District Attorney, welcome.
Kevin, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It is the election season, and I thought it was very valuable to have you kind of come in here, chat a little bit about what it is that the District Attorney's Office does. I think there's a lot of misconceptions. People don't realize that when, you may be in the whole Marvel thing these days when it comes to crime fighters, but the real crime fighters are not only our local police departments, but our county district attorney offices.
I think that's a fair statement. I mean, obviously the first responders, our fire, our police, those men and women every day doing a great job to keep all of us safe. But the district attorney will get involved in a case or in a situation. If there's a death, automatically we're going to be brought in by statute. And also if we're asked to come in by the local police to look at a case, help them out, whatever it may be, and making sure that we can do our job. And our job at the end of the day is to make a determination as to whether or not a crime was committed. And can we go forward in a good faith fashion to make sure that we can get justice for the people in our community? And at the same time, what can you do to make sure you can stop cycles? Cycles of domestic violence, cycles of child abuse. How do you help the people who are committing today's crime, who maybe in the past they were victims of crimes and now they're today's perpetrators? We have to try to stop these cycles, and I think that's now why what we do in the DA's office is different than what it was back when I started as an intern in the Plymouth DA's office in 1983.
Yeah, let's come to community chat. Let's talk a little bit about, the district attorney's office is a lot more than just a video clip you see on TV when it comes to investigating a crime or when it comes to prosecuting someone for said crime. Right. Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. There's an awful lot of work that goes on in all those cases. And when there is, say, a homicide, for instance, we will have, upon notification, and generally speaking, I'll show up at the scene of the homicide, depending upon where it is and where I am located at that time. Because I think it's important for people to see that the district attorney is there, and I can also assess the situation with the state police and the local police, making a determination as to what can be said and what can't be said to the media. Because you can't tell everything that's going on. You want to make sure that you let people understand that if a situation is dangerous or not, and whether or not there's a need to be concerned, or also whether or not where you are at the steps in your investigation. Most times it's really at the very beginning of it, and how can you do your job, make sure that you go down that fashion until if there is somebody who's going to get arrested down the road, have you done everything that you can do? Have you crossed all the T's? Have you dotted all the I's? Have you gotten all the affidavits and the warrants, the things that you need to do? Because then when somebody gets arrested and charged in these cases, that's pretty much the die has been cast at the beginning, and you will deal with that throughout the life of that case.
Talk about how the 21 years that you have been the district attorney, how issues have changed. You talk about you coming in, at the start of the computer age, and you probably didn't talk about cybercrime back 20 years ago, but it's a real thing. And then for that, you have to have ways to be able to investigate and look at different things, because the crime that took place 20 years ago may be a vastly different crime today.
Sure. I mean, you have to be very malleable because the world is constantly changing. Mm-hmm. And when I first became district attorney, we used to have Nextel phones that were chirping with each other. So we would have all the troopers in our office and the people that were dealing with the homicide case would all have a Nextel. And it was almost like a walkie-talkie sort of situation. Then we ended up going to Blackberries, and then we ended up going to Apple phones, and you watch the technology change and what you can do with that. Nowadays, of course, with phones, you can do incredible things with them. You can follow phones. You can go from the pings on the towers. And you can do things in prove cases that you couldn't do 20 years ago. But having said that, 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, if you have a cold case, an old case, back then, because things weren't as forward at that point, you didn't know about DNA back then. You didn't know about fingerprints that could have been like on a cigarette butt or things along those lines. And sometimes I look at a crime scene from one of our cold case reviews, and you'll see information that you wish had been taken at that time, because now it would certainly be evidentially worthwhile to look at it and go forward with that. And I think that people have a right to understand, and I think that people have a duty to understand that, we're trying to make sure we can do our jobs and solve all of our cases, which is why, as I sit here today in 2022, from 1960 to now, we have 60 unsolved homicides. That's 60. We've looked at an awful lot of them, we've solved a whole bunch of them, and we've closed a whole bunch of them. Victims in these cases have a right to believe that people are always looking at them, the person that hurt their loved one and made a change in their life forever. And we do that. And there's probably a good chance we're not going to be able to solve the majority of these 60 because they're so old and many people have passed away and there's not evidence there per se, but we're always looking. And if we can do that, we will.
Yeah, and there's been, I want to say, probably in the past year and a half, haven't there been a couple of cold cases that evidence has come forth and that you've actually been able to be on the forefront and go, hey, we actually have evidence to this date because something broke a correct way, or information came and maybe somebody had passed and information was brought forth?
We had, the Virginia Hanna case out of Pembroke, which occurred in 1985. I mean, that's an awful long time ago. And it was good that we were able to come to a resolution for the family, find out what the heck happened, to find out for the town of Pembroke, who for years, I mean, Rick Wall, the retired police chief over in Pembroke, Rick was a paper boy back then, and he knew this was one of his people he gave the newspaper to. It was always there. The small towns and even the big cities, you don't forget those things. How do you help people and understand that you're going to go forward and you're going to come to an end of that road one way or the other, and you let the chips fall where they may. It doesn't matter where you go. You do the best you can within the confines of the law and come up with that resolution. So I think that over the years we've been doing that. To this day, every unsolved homicide case in Plymouth County has a town official, a town police officer involved, a trooper, and an assistant DA, and we review them all the time.
What's it like to give a family that final resolution, even if it's not what they want to hear, to be able to provide that and know that through a lot of hard work, you were able at least to provide them some closure?
I think providing answers is really important, and people want to know what happened to their loved ones, even if it happened a long time ago. And I see my brother and sister DAs across the Commonwealth, across the United States of America in the same situation, that you have conversations with them and they're very thankful. I think they're also torn up about it. Many times the response you'll get is, I wish this happened when my mom was alive, when my dad was alive, and things like that, because it meant so much to them if their child had been killed back then. So that's what I never forget, the fact that we have a bigger duty to the community, we have a bigger duty to the victims in this community to make sure that we stand up for them and that we stand up for the people who don't have a voice, whether they be children, whether they be seniors, or whether they be somebody who's been passed away.
One of the other things that we're dealing with as a society these days is gun violence, especially in this country. And as far as the county, I mean, how often are we seeing gun violence, and how tough is your office on prosecuting folks who are a part of these crimes?
Well, one of the many grants we've had, and we've had since I've been DA over the last 21 years, we've brought in more than $24 million to the county. And sometimes they're for street prevention, gun prevention, sometimes they're for drugs and opiate prevention, whatever it may be, human trafficking we're doing right now, and making sure that we can get information and help people, education and training and all that stuff. So we've been dealing with Project Safe Neighborhood, which is, we were selected one of 4 sites in the United States of America by the Department of Justice to give us money so we can work together to continue to drive down crime in the city of Brockton, because Brockton is our urban community here in Plymouth County, and since 2015 to now, we've had a significant decrease in the violent crime that's occurred in the city of Brockton, including homicides, robberies, rapes, very serious cases that occur there from 2015 to the present date, downtrend. We're also dealing with, we see in that same time period, 35% decrease in the amount of people that have been shot, strike that, people that shootings themselves, 25% decrease in the people that have been shot. Our numbers are continually going down, and it's not just COVID numbers. You can say what you want about COVID, that it was a different world back then. We're going back 7 years, making sure that we can work on that. So you want to make sure that you can get those guns off the street, you prosecute those individuals, and you hold them accountable. That's what this is about. It doesn't matter who they are, it doesn't matter where they're from. If they are bringing violence and anarchy and chaos to you, you need to make sure you remove that individual. The vast majority of crime is done by a small group of individuals. When you target the small group of individuals, you watch your numbers go down, like it's been happening here in Brockton for quite a while, and at the same time, we've watched our incarceration rates go down. So what does that tell you? And significantly, 79% Plymouth County House of Correction in the last 10 years, it's gone down. Massachusetts is 50 out of 50 regarding incarceration rates right now. The Department of Correction has gone down another 50%. What that shows you is that the numbers are going down because the right people are in jail. The less people that are in jail, and also at the same time your crime numbers have gone down, you're doing the right things. And that's what we're trying to do with our whole overall philosophy of front-end work, back-end work, and holding people accountable in the middle.
I think the other thing that I know that your office has been involved with is in regards to the opioid epidemic, dealing with drugs, dealing with individuals who might be out there dealing drugs. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because, over time we have seen the evolution of the different drugs that people are getting addicted to, and it's getting even worse where you get the introduction of fentanyl, which can be not only deadly to the individual who's taking it, but also the individuals, the officers and law enforcement folks who have to deal with those individuals.
Sure, and you're also, right now they're talking about rainbow fentanyl. I don't know if you've seen pictures of that. It looks like candy. Oof. And if somebody had purchased that for their own use and they put it on their kitchen table, if they have a child there, it looks like a little sweet tart or something like that. A child's probably going to take that. We have watched the destruction of our community occur on or about 2012, 2013, back when OxyContin was out there. And when it was being sold, it was professed to be non-addictive. Well, we all know that's not true. And during that same time period, we watched between 2013 and 2015, our unattended fatal opiate overdoses doubled from 52 to about 100 and something in 1 year. That got our attention. So I worked with Sheriff McDonald. We put together the Plymouth County Drug Abuse Task Force, which is really a clearinghouse of bringing people together to how do we work together? Because every town was dealing with this. Every town had a fax community. They were having meetings every night. You could have gone to a different meeting every night of the week for a month because all the towns were trying to struggle with it. It made sense to have a clearinghouse, bring in professional individuals, whether they be from, we had our 5 hospitals in our county, we have our legislative delegation, we have faith-based people, we have the police, we have the law enforcement sub-department of that. Education, we have Bridgewater State University. People sitting around and talking about what we can do and have our subcommittees will have the meetings on themselves. So therefore, anybody looking for information, we can get that and give it out to them. And that has directed us in the direction of doing all sorts of other programs, helping children, whether they be drug-endangered kids, whether they be kids with adverse childhood experiences. If those kids are watching their parents, their brothers, their loved ones overdosing, that's what's known as an adverse childhood experience. And the more ACEs you have in your life, the more likely it is you're also going to use drugs. We have a responsibility to help those kids, and that's why what we're trying to do here for quite a while is make our schools trauma sensitive with trainings and with grants that we've been able to get.
Let's talk about other things that are offered by your office, programs. Always finding ways to better inform the citizens regardless of the age, whether it's the youngest to the oldest, the latest scam. Talk to me about being out in the community and trying to better inform folks about some of the things they should be aware of. Well,
it was certainly a challenge during COVID. I mean, I often will go to Council on Aging and talk to seniors about the ongoing scams and talk to them whether or not somebody, whether it be telemarketers, whether they be people who come into your house, do little fixtures on your house, things such as that, people trying to rip you off, people maybe trying to get you to make a credit card donation. We constantly tell them, protect your information. Your information is more important than the money in your wallet. Therefore, you have to keep aware of that. And with our seniors especially, I mean, now we're all getting emails on our phone telling us we won the Canadian lottery and as you won a brand new, 2023 Ford Explorer. All you got to do is pay, the taxes, and they're going to bring this brand new car to you. And like I often tell all the seniors, if you didn't play the Canadian lottery, you didn't win it. And unfortunately, some people will actually go along with this. We have significant romance scams that's going on now, especially with seniors who may be alone and lonely, and they're going online and they're talking to people who they believe are these great heroes. But the thing is, they never meet them.
A little catfishing going on?
Yeah, a lot of catfishing going on. And there's always a picture. They're in Afghanistan, they're a colonel in the army, they're an oil rigger working out in the ocean. And many times people will give up their hard-earned money to this because they want to believe it. They want to believe somebody's out there. And that's why I think the COAs are so important. Our triad programs are so important because seniors need to have, and we all need to have, some sort of communication with people. And that's why I think COVID was so devastating for a lot of people.
Let's talk about the different divisions and units that you have that are attached to your office. I didn't realize that you had so many different groupings that are a part of your office.
Yeah, I mean, you have to nowadays. You have to have our family protection team, which is dealing with like our rape cases and our human trafficking cases and our commercial sexual exploitation of children cases, because they're all kind of going together. And we need to, the important thing like we do with the family protection team is we do lots of education. We do it for first responders. We do it for police, to tell them and ask them, when you show up at a scene, look at the area. Observe that area. Do you see toys? Do you see something going on that is indicative of there may be a child who maybe the next day that little boy or little girl is going to go to school? And if you're 7 or 8 and you go to school the next day, you think the whole world knows your business. Well, in actuality, you go to school the next day, nobody says anything to you. We developed a program called Handle with Care, in which basically the police, if they show up at a scene like that, the next day prior to school, that police officer will call the school and say, Tim Cruz, handle him with care. That's all they tell them. They don't violate any privileges. They don't violate any HIPAA laws. And that way that the trained teacher, the trained custodian, can know what to look for and get that child help. And if there are high at-risk kids, which a lot of them are anyways, they can get them even more professional services. So it's so important, I think, to continue to work with those things. It makes a difference in our community. And once again, I think it's a small piece as to why we've seen a significant decrease in our overall crime numbers.
Talk about the many relationships you have, especially with legislators, and helping to craft legislation that's going to protect the citizens of Plymouth County. I know that one of the most recent ones that was put forth by Governor Baker, that was the dangerousness bill.
Right.
Talk to me about a bill and the provisions within it that while they're still talking about it, it's still in committee, and there's still hope that some form of this bill could be passed. How important is it to your office that the folks who are victims of domestic violence, or there are people who are repeat offenders who might cut off their ankle bracelet, that laws like this and you having relationships with legislators are key when it comes to being the head of this office? We're
really lucky that we have a lot of really good legislators down here that are willing to listen to us. Really the boots on the ground is what we need in order to do our job. And that's what changing the dangerousness statute would be. It's going to expand the amount of cases that we can move for. I mean, right now, the vast majority of child sexual abuse cases, we can't move forward on them. Now, some people say, well, that's okay, that's fine. We need to have more data on that. I have to be honest with you. When a little girl or little boy is hurt, 10 years old or whatever, I don't need data to tell me at that point that person's dangerous. And what we're doing is we're bringing information to a judge. The judge makes the decision. We don't make a decision. That judge will make a determination and hold that person for a period of time. What we need to do is make sure we expand the time that they're held, because none of these cases are going to be resolved in 90 days or 120 days. And these people aren't going to be less dangerous in 90 or 120 days. And we also need to make sure that we have, like you were just talking about, the GPS, that it's a felony. Right now, it's malicious destruction of property under the value for misdemeanor. So it's nothing special. People are cutting off their GPS bracelets all the time, and they're getting away with it. If that is supposed to give people some hope that, yes, we can let some people back into the community, but we're going to know where they're at. If they're cutting off the GPS, then it's just plain not working. So what we're looking to do is working with Governor Baker, working with a lot of our legislators, we're trying to get more tools for our toolbox. Some people say we're overreaching, the ACLU for one, but in actuality, this is about protecting victims and keeping people safe. And it's a tool that we have to use, whether this or whether it be the wiretap statute, which hasn't been changed. It was enacted in 1968. It hasn't changed since then. That's kind of crazy. Neil Armstrong walked on the moon in 1969. We have iPhones now. The world has changed. And a case came down, which is actually a Brockton case, in which the SJC said you have to add some language in there, because right now the wiretap statute is written for organized crime, which would be like the mafia, versus disorganized crime, which is like a lot of the gang issues that we're dealing with. We need to change it. We need to change it now.
I know a former colleague of yours who is a district attorney in a neighboring county actually looked to decriminalize certain offenses, whether it was shoplifting, certain drug possessions, wanton, malicious destruction of property. Is that something that concerns you, that this could be a trend with other district attorney offices, or if in fact anybody succeeds you and wants to change laws like that could be something that could, the folks in this county would have to deal with?
I run, mine's an elected office, so I run for district attorney. If
Right.
I wanted to be a legislator, I'd run for state rep or state senator. I don't write laws. I enforce them. I have a constitutional duty to uphold that I take under my oath every 4 years. And so whether I like the laws or not, my personal opinions are irrelevant. I have a responsibility to look at all those cases. Yes, I can use my discretion. Yes, I can dismiss a case. I can null process a case. I can divert a case. I can do all sorts of things that we're already doing. But you know what? I have to look at them. To say that I am not going to prosecute, I think is a dereliction and an abdication of your duties and your responsibilities, especially when people are saying, oh, we're going to spend much more resources on violent crime. Really? Well, it only takes a real prosecutor, even a younger one, probably a minute or two to look at the file, look at an individual's history. We need to look at the offenders, not the offenses, and put that overall package together. Are you telling me that if an armed robber was released and now he figures out you're not going to prosecute him for shoplifting, so he goes to 10 different stores and now they're all shoplifting under a certain amount of money, you're going to look the other way? That's absurd. What we need to do, and what we're working on the national DA's level right now, is trying to make sure we can change our laws on a statewide basis, hopefully Massachusetts, of aggregation. So that if you go out and you shoplift 10 times in a row, we can aggregate them together. So therefore there's going to be a more enhanced penalty so that the mom and pop stores and the people who are working hard every day trying to do their jobs, sell little candies and items to all of us, or it's CVS, whatever it is, they know that somebody's going to be out there and have their backs. To look the other way, to turn us into San Francisco where they shut down 14 different Walgreens because people are walking in and out doing what they want, that's absurd. It makes no sense whatsoever. We have a responsibility to do our job, to help the people that we can help, and at the same time enforce the law. If you want to change the law yourself, run for state rep.
Let's talk about your personal policy when it comes to transparency. You are probably one of the most transparent people I know. And you lend yourself, whether it's to do a regular radio spot on a local radio station or sit down with a fellow elected official and talk about certain things, even being here today. What does it mean to be transparent and to openly talk about things so that the folks who elect you on a regular basis know what you are working on and what your job, how things transpire in your office?
Well, I mean, I think you always want to put your cards on the table. And, many times in my job, there's things I can't talk about. Whether they're ongoing investigations, there may be additional conflicts that are out there, things that you can't talk about. And also, I'm also bound by the Massachusetts the rules of disciplinary conduct and ethics conduct regarding what you can say about ongoing cases. So I always try to abide by that and make sure that I cannot say those things. But people have a right to know what we're doing. And I think that to the extent that we can talk about it, we should. People need to know what the DA does. When I go to a room sometimes and I ask people, do you know what the DA does? And I'll get that blank look and they'll say to me, I go, you ever watch Law and Order? Do you watch CSI? And they'll raise their hands and say, I left. I go, well, it's nothing like that. My job is so much different. Yep. Whether it be working legislatively, trying to work for budget issues, but at the same day, you have to make decisions. And when you make decisions based upon the totality of circumstances, some of which you can't talk about. And social media is out there saying things about you and you can't respond to it. You have to be willing to take the hit because you can't talk about all the things that go in your decision-making process. All you can do is make the call based upon what you have, take the facts, apply it to the law, make the call. And you're always going to have people who will say things, you're always going to have people who will throw rocks. If you can't take that, then you shouldn't be in this business. You need to understand that. People don't always agree with you. And you do the best you can. Everybody's a human. People make mistakes. I understand that. And we'll continue to do the very best that we can to be as transparent as we can, treat everybody. It doesn't matter what your gender is, what your race is, what your ethnicity is. Treat everybody the same. And make sure that because we all matter in this world. And everybody, when you go back to that other question about, some cases you're not going to prosecute, no crime is too small when it happens to you or your family. You want to make sure that they're safe. You want to make sure that your kids are safe. And if you choose to look the other way, what message does that send? How do you stop that sort of conduct in the future?
Close on a high note and a fun fact, and I know it's going to be impossible because you do serve 27 communities. A couple of your favorite spots in Plymouth County that you maybe like to pop into from time to time, or that you enjoy?
Well, I mean, I live in Marshfield. I grew up in West Bridgewater, and so I usually go to the same restaurants because I'm a pretty boring person. My wife will tell you that. we hang out with the same people, the people that I've grown up with. And one thing I loved doing when my kids were younger was I coached the Coastal Stars hockey. I coached from T-ball all the way up to senior Babe Ruth in Marshfield. And many kids still remember me from that. They don't know me as the DA. They know me that I was Coach Cruz. I was the guy that was out there, pitching 200 pitches to batting practice to them, back when 10 years ago when I used to have an arm. Now that it's gone, I can't throw the ball like that anymore. But, to me, I really enjoy being from the community. I grew up in West Bridgewater. I am a Plymouth County guy. I've never really looked to go anywhere else. I've never looked for higher office. This is what I've been doing for the last 37 years. I've been a criminal trial lawyer. And I think that we have a pretty good handle on what's going on here right now in order to make sure we can drive numbers down, help the people that we can help, and at the same time, that people understand that if there's somebody out there that's going to hurt you, we need to stand up for you and make sure that we put you in a position where you're going to be safe.
Well, little known fact also is that Coach Cruz is a heck of an athlete as well. I've had an opportunity to have some fun at a Pembroke Chamber of Commerce event, and I think you might have played the hot corner, played third base. And
I did, yeah.
Pretty good, yeah. And I hear a heck of a hockey player as well in your free time.
Well,
so.
maybe in the glory days, but those were a long time ago.
Anything you want to say in closing to our audience?
I would just say, that listen, I've been the district attorney now for 21 years, and it's a job that I think that I know and that I think that I love, and I make sure that we're going to be in a position to keep people safe. I think we've been able to do that by bringing in more than $24 million here into our county, which we put right back into the county, and at the same time, we're going to make sure that we do our job, look at all of our cases. I'm a pro-law enforcement person who's been endorsed by the police chiefs and virtually all the unions here, police, fire, labor here in Plymouth County, because they know what we've done, and we're going to continue to do it. So we're going to certainly be working hard to make sure that we can do our job and keep people safe. I appreciate the opportunity for coming out here today.
Website, if folks want to find out more about your campaign for re-election?
My campaign for re-election is datimcruz.com. I asked anybody to go there, and if you have any questions regarding what we're doing, feel free to reach out. And if you have a question regarding our website at work, which has all sorts of other things, it's PlymouthDA.com. Go on that and see the many things we do. It's no longer, as I said earlier, it's no longer your grandparents' DA's office. It's a lot of other stuff.
Well, we thank you so much for taking your time, out of your busy day to come and see us and talk about what it is the District Attorney's Office does, what you do, and your campaign for re-election.
Thanks very much, Kevin.
Best of luck.